the heart is involved in some cases of coronavirus. But when you talk about New York, it's a different setting altogether. The system is now overwhelmed with corona patients. So if you come in with a heart attack in New York now, or in London, if you come with a heart attack, you are going to be assumed to have corona until proven otherwise. The concern is, if this thing gets out of hand and we end up like New York or London, the hospitals that have critical care beds will now be overwhelmed with corona patients, COVID patients, and then when somebody comes with a heart attack or a stroke or heart failure, there won't be any space for him.
Hello and very warm welcome to the Arise interview, 60 minutes of big questions about the big stories from the news and beyond with fresh insight and critical analysis. I am Christian Ogodo. Thanks for joining us, and we're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. Coming up in the next hour, a disturbing report about how herdsmen carry out regular, systematic, targeted attacks on farmers in Nigeria. The report suggests that bandits killed 2,539 Nigerians in 654 attacks. Behind the figures, the document notes that the attacks, killings, and kidnappings were targeted at farmers who are predominantly Christians. Today, we'll speak to the author of the report, who is based in Brussels, Belgium, to get more details behind the figures. And later, we'll discuss the efforts of the Nigerian military in tackling security in the country, even as the Nigerian military reels out its successes, saying over 1,400 terrorists are reported to have been neutralized with the arrest of 166 Boko Haram informants in Nigeria's northeast. We have analysis coming up in a moment. The report, titled Working Document Fulani Militia's Terror Compilation of News Between 2017 to 2020, reveals frightening and horrendous statistics of vicious attacks, deaths, and kidnappings by herdsmen in Nigeria. The petrifying report says herdsmen attacks against farmers are systemic, regular, and targeted. Although Nigerians suffer widespread and systemic terrorist attacks by Boko Haram, ISIL, aligned to the Islamic State of West Africa province, ISWAP, Fulani militias, and Ansaru. And the government has been battling with this insurgency for years that has seen many people displaced from their communities. But behind the figures, the document by an independent international researcher said the attacks, killings, and kidnappings were targeted at farmers who are predominantly Christians. Let's cross live now to Brussels, the Belgian capital, via WebEx and speak to the author of the report, Jose Luis Bazán, who is an international analyst and researcher. Thanks so very much, Luis, Jose, for joining us. But what really is the veracity of these figures, or could it be classified as, one of the usual Western media bias on Nigeria or Africa, as the case may be? Jose?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation and to bring to the public discussion also the report that I produce, which is basically a report. It's a compilation of news. So there is very little, let's say, assessment. It's much more a compilation of facts as reported by mostly Nigerian media. So I use 45 sources, and out of them, 27 are Nigerian English-speaking media. So I try to enter into the let's say, the understanding of the media, and to clarify for myself and for those who want to research on this topic, what is going on, what is happening there, because I was doubting about the mainstream narrative, and I want to know by myself if it's true, how is it reported. So for those interested, you will find there just a number of classified by chronological order of facts reported by media with the links of the media. This is the, let's say, the basics of the research, which of course need further elaboration and further research. But the numbers that you see right now is the numbers I counting the numbers of attacks, the number of killed people, or people kidnapped, raped, etc. Number of killed people, you will see class. So the reports, at least 7 persons killed. It means that probably there are more. So this is the way it was produced. Yes.
Okay, I think we're having some audio problem with Jose Luis Bazán, the International Analyst and Researcher, who was explaining that his research methodology was basically a compilation from 45 sources, 25 of which are from Nigerian newspapers. So, but I was going to ask him further questions once the engineers saw the audio, then would cross back live again to Brussels, the Belgian capital. But I have with me here in the studios another security expert, a former British police officer. He's Vincent Onyekwelu. Vincent, I don't know if you've been privy to that report by Jose, but it's saying so many thousands of Nigerians were killed by, Fulani herders, most probably, and that they were targeted attacks, systematic, or systemic, if you want to say, and the rest. What are your thoughts about this kind of figures and the kind of attacks?
One thing you need to know about this kind of attacks, I heard the word, they were regular attacks, very common words we use. They were systematic attacks, very common words we use. But what touched me was the idea they were targeted attacks. Now, in fighting crime, whenever you use targeted violence, it shows 3 things. Before you do a targeted violence, you have to talk about premeditation. You've thought about it. Then you have to talk about planning. You've planned about it. And then the final thing about it, normally predatory. So they will take you unawares. And when you talk about targeted attacks, you ask yourself, for example, if somebody comes, God forbid, if somebody comes in here and just starts shooting all of us here, you wouldn't say the attack was just done by the person coming here. There must have been a plan. So take it a step back. Before they get here, they must have planned a way to enter the premises. They must have planned a way to go and buy the weapon they're going to use to do the attack. They must have planned a way to convince themselves that through or force are worthy to be attacked. So when you talk about target attack, it's very dangerous. But I give kudos to the gentleman that made the research. It shows that the world is finally keying in to what many Nigerians have been talking and shouting and clamoring about, that people are being killed in Nigeria, and because of either political reasons, religious reasons, they are buried the next day. So we don't even get a good record of what killed them. Is it shrapnels? Is it bullet wounds? Is it machetes? Are they just hacked down by clubs and swords? So, but the important thing here is regular attacks. Are they not regular? Honestly, Based on what he said that it was 45 sources, and over 50% of those sources came from Nigerian-speaking journalists. So 25% of 25% sources came from that. Now you ask yourself, if you go to Kajura in Kaduna South, Katsina people are protesting lately. If you go to Kankara local government area, if you go to Damas local government area, Safana local government area, people are saying we are fed up. And it's Katsina State, the home of our president of the country. So the truth of the matter is, yes, it's good to know that the international communities are taking note and acting because it's been going on.
But Vincent, it's very dangerous, you know, to stigmatize a people by saying that it's Fulani militia. You just mentioned, okay, Kajuru is in southern Kaduna, is a Christian area, but you mentioned Katsina, the home of the president, is swamped by militias, by bandits, by terrorists. How do we classify them?
Beautiful question. As a criminal fighter, as a professional, let me open your mind in this. Now, there are so many reasons why bandits or terrorists could attack the hometown of Mr. President. A, it could be a deal that's gone foul. It could be a deal whereby people have taken monies and did not pay the other people, and they formed into rebel groups. It could be a fact that because you have not paid us well, we have to show you that we're not happy with you. So there could be many reasons. So as a criminal fighter...
Sorry, Vincent, to cut you. I would let you expatiate on that point, but we just have about 2 minutes to go on our first commercial break. Let's quickly go to Brussels and rejoin Jose Luis Bazán. Jose, I was just, what you were making your points there about the methodology you use. Maybe you want to quickly conclude that. Then when we return from our first commercial break, I'll be interrogating more on your sources and your classification. Jose?
Yeah, well, I was saying that, of course, I use all information I found in media. Nigerian, not 20%, but 27 out of 45 sources are Nigerian sources, so it's more than half. And I'm just taking note. I'm just a kind of notary of what media say. That's why I said it's not as such a study, it's a report or a compilation. But we can extract some conclusions. For example, I do agree that as soon as you use the word systematic and target, it means something. I think that from the legal point of view, from the analytical point of view, we cannot mix banditry, for example, with terrorism. These are two totally different things. So the idea of terrorism means three things. First, that there are killings, people wounded, rapes, people taking hostages or destroying property. That's the first element, the crime. The second element is the intention, which is to intimidate a population or part of a population. And the third is to reach a goal, either political, social, economic, or religious. I think that these three elements are present. I'm not talking about the Fulani. I'm not talking about the Fulani herdsmen, which is, of course, an enormous amount of people, probably most of them very peaceful, looking for the way of life, which since hundreds of years. That's absolutely clear. I'm not talking about the Fulani bandits. These are just common criminality. I'm talking, and that's why I use the word militias. I'm talking about probably a very small number of Fulani that either are herdsmen or use or instrumentalize the way of life of herdsmen to enter in certain territories and reach their goals.
Okay, Jose, please, I just want you to hold on there. Let's take some messages when we return. I'll still give you the opportunity to continue on your line of thought. You're still watching the Arise interview. We still got more to come. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the Arise interview. We're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. And my name is Christian Ogdo. Thanks for staying with us. The farmers' herders clash has been long-standing, and the Nigerian government has been unwilling, or trying its best to address the cause of the crisis. Nonetheless, the government tried to implement a few measures like ranching and the Ruga settlement, but it was met with fierce criticism. The majority of farmer herder clashes have occurred between Muslim Fulani herdsmen and Christian farmers, exacerbating ethno-religious hostilities, insecurity and violence, which have led many populations to create self-defense forces and ethnic militias, which have engaged in further violence. According to the Global Terrorist Index 2019, published by the Institute for Economics and Peace, there is an indication that the primary driver of the increase in terrorism in sub-Saharan Africa is a rise in terrorist activity in Nigeria attributed to bandit extremisms. And I still have with me Jose Luis Bazán, who is an international analyst and researcher. He joins me from Brussels, the Belgian capital, live via WebEx. And here in the studio is Vincent Onyekwelu. He's a retired British police officer and a security expert. Let me return to Brussels again, because the research publication, Jose, is stirring a lot of controversy already. And we found that, of course, Arise News sister publication or arm of these days newspaper had published this story on Sunday, 7th June 2020, and yet we're inclined to probe further on the story by asking, what are the assurances that some of these compilations are not fabricated when you take the delicate balance of the Nigerian situation, a multi-ethnic composition, varying degrees of religions and the rest? What kind of checks did you put in this, Jose?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think it's very important because finally what we are looking is for the truth of the reality. That's why I started with reports by the journalists, professional journalists, that of course have an ethics about how to report. We have to be sure that there are no stories, invented stories, distorted, misleading stories. This is something very important for me. I think that there are different sources. As soon as you take into account very diverse number of sources of different understanding, ideology, internal, external, I think that it reduces the risk of having only prefabricated facts. And that's one element. The second element is that it's extremely important, of course, to double check and to set up a kind of group of persons who can locally, one by one, review the facts. That's something that we are doing right now with this compilation. So as I said, this work is humble in the sense that it's just a compilation. Now I'm working on the second part, which is a kind of full report analysis, basically. But this is absolutely important, not only for myself or for those who are experts, not only for Nigerians. I think that for the whole international community, it's very important that we take note of what is going on there. We clarify the relevant elements. If either there is a climate change element, we have to insert it. If there is a religious dimension, we have to insert it there. If there is any other kind of element that is precise to understand what is going on, we have to insert them. But we are looking for the truth. And of course, there are sometimes uncomfortable elements in the truth. And I know that the religious element, it can be controversial, but at the same time, we cannot be blind to the reality about the religious dimension of the problem and the religious tension that exists. I'm not saying that this is a religious war at all. I'm saying that the religious element is more and more relevant to understand the patterns of both the victims and the perpetrators.
Thanks very much, Jose. Vincent, let me come to you. You heard what he's saying, that you cannot isolate, certain elements of religiosity in some of these attacks, and particularly when it's cited as targeted, systematic, and the frequency of occurrence. Mm-hmm. How do you balance a report like this and the reality on ground, and with your international experience as a policing as a police officer?
Academically, let's look at what he's done. He has a thesis that he wanted to test a thesis, which led him to build a hypothesis. Now, this is the hypothesis we are seeing right now based on the report that is out. So what we are doing right now in the studio is trying to synthesize that particular hypothesis to have pro and counter arguments about its authenticity.
Which will definitely come.
Yes.
They will definitely erupt.
Yes. And then later, somebody else may decide to write an antithesis. So a research work is a research work. He tests the facts. He came up with information that I'm very proud of. Number one, he said, if you look at the build-up of this regular, systematic and targeted attacks, they look that way. Because most of them, as I said to you before, when you have to do targeted attacks, you need to have premeditation. You have to plan, and they are predatory. The way the attacks goes as an expert is always predatory. In the middle of the night, they attack. Now, something else you have to think about is when you look at a targeted attack, you look at, is there a cohesion that is there a grievance? If you look after grievance, now look at issue of, was there a reason to justify that grievance? You now talk about, they've done their research, know the people they want to attack, and then they plan, buy the right ammunitions, and they breach the environmental security issues and attack. Now, he says something very critical again, that most of these targeted attacks shows what? Terrorism, which is what? First of all, it has to force people illegally by the use of violence to intimidate them, either politically, either religiously, socially, and otherwise. So if he's putting the right holes at the right points, so it's not like I'm supporting him, I don't know him from anywhere, but as an expert, the truth in Nigeria of today, people are truly being hacked, killed, right, left, and center across very poor communities in Nigeria. At times, people are killed almost every week. Kaduna local government in Southern Kaduna, it's a case study. It's not rocket science. So let it not be that because he's not a Nigerian, because he does not reside in Nigeria, it's not true. True people are killed in Nigeria. Go to Katsina. Remember, not everybody in Katsina is a Muslim. There are Christian indigenous in Katsina state also. All right? So the bottom line is, it's a good thought to have a research document out. Potentially, technically, we have issues to say, how do we resolve these issues going forward? We bring issue of what we call TAMP. Number one, we have to say, what are we going to do to reduce this issue? So you have to take these targets out. Assessment. Manage them. You cannot do this if you don't have a good assessment of threat management. In Nigeria, we don't have such. We are too reactive to incidences. We are not proactive to incidences. How do we know the hotspots? Kajuro in Southern Ghana has been a common place of wasting of blood. What is the proactive measures in place in these hotspots that within 15 minutes, within 7 minutes, response team can come to counter any attack? There's nothing. Before they come, they will slaughter people, children and women, and they will go. And they will say, oh, do not retaliate. And the next morning, they are buried in graves, unmarked graves. We don't even know their names. So in conclusion, I think what he's come up with is a fantastic research that Nigerians need to actually check and critically explore and discuss. But is it true that people are killed in Nigeria? I'm in Nigeria, people are really killed in Nigeria.
All right, Vincent, let's cross live again back to Brussels, where Jose Luis Bazán is there. Jose, I hope I won't be preempting your second publication, your second report, your research work. If I ask you that, do you realize in your first research and the subsequent one you're going to come up with that there are terrorists infiltrating or coming into Nigeria, whether Fulani herdsmen or the ISWAP people from Libya, from Mauritania, through Mali, Niger, Chad, into Nigeria? Does your report capture any of these? And this could be terrorists from outside the shores of Nigeria coming to kill Nigerians.
So thank you for this input and element. I'm still going on with the second part of the research, certainly, but I would like just to make a clarification. My report is very humble initially. It's just a compilation of information reported by media. So when I use words like Fulani, Herdsmen, and so on, these are not my words. These are the words of the media. eh? That's the first thing. The second thing is that it is also a humble report in the sense that it's just a tool for further research for those interested, policymakers, specialists, or those people who are really interested in the country. So I think that this is the framework of the research. And coming back to one of the assessments by the gentleman that was speaking before me, for me, the most important thing is to protect people. I think that we have to understand that beyond any qualifying facts of terrorism, banditry, or whatever, the most important thing is that people are stopped to kill and that the potential victims are protected. This is the most important thing for everybody. It should be basically and firstly for the public authorities, but also for the international community. That's my concern. We have to understand what is going on there, but basically and primarily to protect the victims. So if we say there are no target attacks, we are missing a piece, because certainly we can identify the targets are mostly farmers. It's not, a broad number of very different groups. It's basically farmers. It is true at the same time that violence in Nigeria is much broader. Again, this report is very humble. We just focus on the Fulani herdsmen attacks as reported by media. Of course, we have cultism, we have banditry, we have criminal gangs, we have all the type of terrorism, but I'm focused only on the terrorist attacks which are allegedly performed by Fulani militias. Again, not Fulani herdsmen, not Fulani in general, but Fulani militias.
Okay, okay. Well, we'll be asking you when we return from break where that coinage came from, Fulani militias, not the headsmen, not the average Fulanese that Nigerians know. You're still watching the Arise interview. We've still got more ahead when we return. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the Rise interview, and thanks for staying with us. We're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja, as they have Jose Luis Bazán, the International Analyst and Researcher in Brussels, and here in the studio, Vincent Onyekwelu. Vincent, let me quickly, ask you about Nigeria's porous border. Must be a contributing factor to the wave of the kind of banditry, terrorism, kidnappings that we're seeing. And not to talk, and also with the proliferation of light arms in the West African sub-region.
Exactly. Now, a few days ago, the governor of Kano State,
Ganduje
actually raised a very hot topic about asking the federal government to stop the influx of who? Fulanese. These are not my own words. These are not the words of the researcher. This is a current governor of Kano State saying that the federal government should stop Fulanese, foreign Fulanese from coming to Nigeria with weapons. So I think to a higher level, that statement kind of substantiated the research outcome that Jose has done. Now, when you talk about borders, we believe that since November, December last year, our borders are supposedly closed. But we know that the borders of Nigeria, with over 1,000 illegal border entry points, are not secured. Because if not, Governor Ganduje will not say that comment about foreign Fulani, whether they are Fulani herdsmen or whether they are foreign Fulani militia, we don't know. Remember, when you talk about border, there was an issue of people moving from the northern region to the southern region of Nigeria in trucks, in trailers, in unmarked vehicles, and people in the south got worried. Today, we got information, obviously you cannot say how did the information come, that previously they stopped them on the trucks, but now they disembark around Otopa Junction or Ubolafo, and they now walk through the bush parts. So you don't expect to see them in trailers anymore. They've changed that system. The same topic he raised about his research, systematic. They don't come in trucks. They will disembark somewhere and use normal local transport system or even walking through the bushes to enter into people's homestead. The bottom line is Nigeria is faced with serious security challenges, and people have to protect their homestead. Develop a whistle system, a vigilante system. You don't need to have arms. A gong system. Keep alert in the night. Don't get yourself drunk to stupor that you cannot wake up, because I said they are predetermined, they planned, and they are predatory. So when you're dealing with a predator, you need to be awake. When you see anything happen, keep dogs. Dogs understand natural instinct more than human beings. They will bark. Blow your whistle. Have your able-bodied men to protect your homestead, because Mr. Gandhi has said something. There are foreigners coming here with weapons. Now, going forward about our borders are seriously porous. It's well recorded, it's well documented. I don't have to wait for Mr. Bazán to say that for us to know. It's the gospel truth, and we have to do more. Technology, one issue. We don't want to have the funds to do it, but we use our funds in irrelevant matters and leave people dying because they are what? Peasants. If they are the sons of governors or the sons of a president that have been murdered in Kajuro, or senators' children have been murdered in Kajuro, something would have been done. But because they are peasants, nobody thinks about them. It's very discouraging, and I think the federal government should look into it honestly and holistically.
The people are not hearing their voices and the songs of the government. But let me ask you this. Is it right to so label the Fulanese as militias?
Oh no, it is wrong. The Fulanese that we grew up with are lovely, wonderful, caring people. Your normal Fulani man is so caring. They don't hurt you. They love you, and most of them are handsome. You know, they have this olive tone about their complexion but the bottom line is, we are talking about a potential infiltration. You don't need the whole Fulani stock in Nigeria to support. It could be only 10% of them that are now using violence to cause terrorism. Secondly, remember, there's a research that was done by the Chinua Achebe Center of Studies some years ago that said that there is a hierarchy. The normal herdsmen you see that rear cattle is not the owner of the cattle. He's only been borrowed or paid to take cattle from Kuje to Gariki. He's not the owner. The next level, you will get the people that control the cattle market. The next level, you get the top Nigerians, most people in the military, in the police, that actually owns this cattle. These heads of cattle are not owned by the man on the street. The next level, you get the militia. Why the militia? When a particular community tries to be stubborn to the lower herdsmen, they'll report to the next hierarchy. They report to the next hierarchy and they'll get their militia to come and deal with that community. And once they do, you have that common word that say, do not retaliate. Allow the police to come and manage it. People are killed. So I think it's unfair to call Fulanis in general, but he said that we're talking about Fulani militia. Fulani militia. And if you look around Nigeria, there's been so many records, video, arguments, talks about the same Fulani militia. And we should not be scared to call a spade a spade. Don't think that because they say Fulani militia, we should be scared. No. You call it by the name. When you call evil by its name, the evil has to change. But if you try to avoid calling the real name, it persists.
Vincent, do you think the Nigerian government is done or is doing enough to checkmate this?
Personally, I think it would be unfair for me to say that the Nigerian government has not done something about it. They've done a lot. Once upon a time, there were bombing up and down in Nigeria. We all know that record. They've stopped it. And it's a big plus to them. Some time ago, communities are being chased away into IDP camps. It's reduced. Some time ago, even the chief of army staff has gone into the war front by himself to counter these terrorist elements. And he said he's going to be there till the end. And he's doing well. But there is issue we need to understand about criminality, which I understand very well. Trust. The Nigerian population are lacking trust in the powers that be. So when you hear in social media, you say, oh, we've killed 150 militia today, you hear audio killing.
Okay, let me just put you on hold there so that you don't take the wind off my sail. There is a story for us here. Over 1,400 terrorists are reported to have been neutralized with the arrest of 166 Boko Haram informants in Nigeria's northeast. The Chief of Army Staff, General Tukul Buratai, gave these figures in a chat with State House correspondents after he met with President Muhammadu Buhari. The Army Chief, who has been in the northeast in the last 2 months, said there's been a remarkable success in the fight against insurgency in the region. Buratai briefed President Buhari on the performance of the troops during his stay, noting that the morale in the camp is very high. He says the overall plan of the military is to rid the country of insecurity and other emerging threats with support from other security agencies.
Came in from the northeast just about a day ago, and it behoves on me to brief Mr. President of the 2 months I've stayed there on what transpired, and I've given him details of what the troops are doing, what we have achieved, and what we hope to achieve in the nearest future. The efforts put so far has paid off, and we will continue to deal with the situation not only in the northeast but also across the country. Tremendous success has been achieved, and we are very happy with what is going on the ground. Well, surely you will agree with me that the troops' morale is very high. Is something of confidence, something of trust, is something that will raise the spirit of any officer or soldier when he sees his chief of army staff in the trenches along with him. And this has raised the morale of the troops, and this has made them to put in their best, and that's what has resulted in us so far, and is still ongoing. Over 1,429 of these Boko Haram terrorists have been neutralized, and we have arrested over 116 Boko Haram terrorist informants, their spies, their couriers on logistics, and their coordinators in the villages, in towns, and even in the forests. So this is a tremendous achievement. Our intelligence corps, along with the Department of State Services, and of course our good friends, the civilian JTF, have worked very hard to see that this is achieved. And I assure you things will continue to improve. Military operations are carried out, with plan, and the overall plan is to rid the whole of the Northwest, and of course, emerging threats that are coming up in other parts of the country, especially the North Central. Some areas that hitherto had been quiet, we're also planning towards that. Not only in Sokoto, but also...
As Nigeria's Army Chief of Staff, Lieutenant General Tuko Buratai, they're assessing the successes of the Nigerian military in the battle against terrorists, bandits, and kidnappers. And we're going on a short break. When we return, we'll be interrogating the successes that's been recorded by the Nigerian military in the front against Boko Haram. Stay with us. You're welcome back to the Rise interview. We're live in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. My name is Christian Ogodo. Okay, we've now been rejoined by Jose Luis Bazán, the International Analyst and Researcher in Fairway, Belgium, in Brussels, the capital of Belgium. Jose, let me finally ask you this. From your findings and reports, do you think that successive Nigerian governments have not done enough to secure these victims of these terrorist acts? Jose?
Sorry, can you repeat? I can't hardly.
That from your report, did you sift out any insinuation or conclusion that the successive Nigerian governments, have not done enough to protect its citizens or the victims of these terrorist acts?
Well, what I've seen in the religious leaders, social leaders, certainly they are not very happy about the behavior, let's say, of the authorities. They think that they are not protected enough. They think that the government, the federal government, but also regional governments can do much more. And above all, they can try first to identify who are the leaders of these militias. They can stop and prevent them. They can also try to reach the people who are attacked or are at the risk, let's say, of any attack. And it seems that this is not happening, or this is not happening at the level that the population expects. We all know that every single government has a responsibility to protect. And I think that farmers, in this case, when it comes to the attacks of the militias, they do not feel protected. It's not just a matter of feeling, it's a matter of facts. As soon as regularly you see that around you people are killed, wounded, or little girls are even raped, you cannot feel that your government is doing enough, even though from the from the top of the pyramid, maybe with many other problems, they can think that this is part of what they can do, and that's if not enough, they are doing right. But I think that they have to intensify strongly any kind of measure from military, police, prevention, education, support of the victims, even psychological support. So I think that much more can be done, first by the government, but as well by the international community. I think that this is not just a matter of internal affairs. I think as soon as we see that there are thousands of people killed, I think that the government needs some support, and I think the international community has to grant that support.
Thanks so very much. I would really have loved to continue to have you on the Arise interview, but we look forward again to you joining us, maybe at the conclusion of the part 2 of your research finding. Thanks very much, Jose Luis Bazán, International Analyst and Researcher from Fairway, Belgium. And let's turn to you now, Vincent. You saw the Nigerian Chief of Army Staff there really thumping his chest about the successes of the Nigerian military and annihilating 1,400 Boko Harams in 2 months. That is tempering the kind of heroics displayed by the Chadian president recently when he wiped out, the Boko Haram and ISWAP terrorists. What are your thoughts here?
I would say a big thank you to the Chief of Army Staff for taking the bull by the horn, by making himself available to go to the war front by himself. That motivation for the troops to be so wonderful. So a big thank you to him and a big kudos. He has done well. Going further, what he said there was what I talked about TAMP before, TAMP, Threats Assessment Management Program. He now assesses the threat, but we can go more because it's internal national security matter. These guys are not like Ghanaian army or Sierra Leone army fighting in Nigeria. These guys are asymmetric militants. So we need to go further. Secure Nigeria, they need to do more. The trust is not there. When you hear I've killed 1,400 Boko Haram, go to Shemina, you hear audio killings. And audio killings, Shemina, means fake killings. So the people don't trust. They need to build that civilian-military relationship, police relationship, whereby people can respect and trust these numbers. Secondly, talk about what we call PINs, P-I-N-S, pre-incident indicators. Before all these targeted, regular, and systematic attacks happen, what is the PINs in place? Do you have a pre-incident indicator to tell you that this could happen? How do you pick it up? Everybody that's got plans to target attack will plan it. They will work for it. They will go and buy weapons for it. They may have to gather a mob to do it the work. When you watch it in your community, it comes down to the issue of what? Community-based policing. But finally, sir, every community needs to wake up in Nigeria and smell the coffee. Your bush, the chief of army mentioned about bush parts. Everybody has to make sure their bush parts, their forest, their farmland are secured. How do you do that? Go with your local vigilante teams. You don't need to carry any arms, but sweep across your bush part, your forest. Know who lives in your bush areas. Link to the next community, they will take it from you and go to the next community.
That is the intelligence gathering, that the security forces have been asking for, to support them in this war against terrorists, bandits, and kidnappers. Look at what the Chief of Army Staff again said, very instructive, when he said, besides the 646 Boko Haram fighters, arrested, 116 spies, couriers, logistics suppliers were arrested too.
Yes.
Supporting Boko Haram, supporting this kind of heinous and treacherous crime against their fatherland.
Yes. You know why? Because we did not start proactively. People in that part of the country has been convinced, some of them have been convinced, easily recruited because of poverty in the country, number one, because of unemployment in the country, number two, because there is poor education and poor awareness about these issues, because there are poor pins in place, because the threat assessment management program TAMP is poor, the pins are poor, pre-incident indicators are poor. So people are easily recruited. So you kill them, there's a team to take over. We need to know that it's not only about weapons and boots on the ground. We need to go into the people's conscience, win their minds, win their hearts to trust what you're doing. Not when they report, there are people in my bush, in my forest.
Well, just like the Chief of Army Staff paid kudos to the civilian JTF, the Joint Task Force, by civilians, in the collaboration in routing these people.
He has to also pay kudos to other people, vigilantes across the country, not only in the Northwest. There are people across the Lagos State, the Southwest, the Amotekun people,
but
the vigilante
you have
people.
to agree that the intensity of the war in the Northeast and the issue of banditry in the Northwest is not comparable to whatever is happening in the South.
You need to appreciate something that we've got African proverbs. We say that, when they carry the body of a stranger, you don't respect because it's not one of your own relatives. But the bottom line, people have been killed in Uzowani, in Enugu State, Benue State, Anambra State, Taraba State. Just name it across Nigeria. What happened? The original indigents have been outsmarted, sent to IDP camps, and you have potential foreigners living in the localities who is not asking them to leave and bring people back from the IDP camps to take over their communities. So, unfortunately, I wish the Nigerians wake up. They are doing enough, but they are not doing enough. And lives are being lost. And one life that died in America last 2 weeks is the life that is causing havoc across the world because of one man, because the media were there to use that phone to record. Since it happened in the Northwest, we don't have records. It's only one side of the story from the military. We need to have a variety of stories so we can be able to say, is this the truth? But right now, it's only the military telling us what is happening in the Northwest. Nah, I don't feel good. There's what you call the sixth sense in security. You have the touch, smell, taste, sight, feel. But the sixth sense, you cannot teach somebody. Something is wrong in the Nigerian security architecture because people are dying and we are not saving lives and properties as we should. Honestly, but the government has done tremendous, but they should do more.
Thank you, and thank you. And thank you so very much. Vincent Onyekwelu is a former British police officer and a security expert. Thanks for coming on the Arise Show.
Thanks
and
for
of course,
having
we also had Jose Luis Bazán, an international analyst and researcher who joined us earlier from Brussels. Well, that's it on the Arise interview for today. Remember to join us tomorrow for another edition. And from me and the entire team here in Abuja, goodbye and thanks for watching.